Well, I guess I'm the coin guy now. So at the end of my Sub-Zero coins video from last year, I promised I'd make a tier list of every secret coin in Geometry Dash if the video hit 50,000 likes. And not only did we reach that, but it ended up being one of the best performing videos on my channel, and it also somehow reached the trending tab. I don't know why you like hearing me talk about secret coins so much, but you know what? As the second best fox in the Geometry Dash community and an advocate for good game design, I feel like it's become my duty. So in this video, I'm going to look at all 81 coins in Geometry Dash, including the spin-offs, and grade them based on how good I think they are. These are not being graded based on how hard they are, but rather if I think they're well designed or not. And before we get into ranking, I want to clarify what exactly this means. Like the name implies, the coins are meant to be secret. This could mean anything from passing through a fake wall to falling into a completely hidden area. But more importantly, their purpose is to provide an optional challenge for the player. Most coins involve going off the normal path in order to do something harder in return for a reward. The way I see it, the two key components of every secret coin are skill and memory. So how do we make a good one? Well, first off, skill should always come first because it provides a longer lasting challenge. Coins that rely entirely on memory are only fun to figure out once, but skill coins feel satisfying every time you manage to pull them off. It's still nice to have bits of memory in order to make the coin feel more interesting and secret, but it's not enough to make it stand on its own. Secondly, coins should be tempting. If you see a coin, you should want to go for it, or at the very least think about how you might be able to get it. If a coin is completely hidden, there won't be any temptation because you'll have no idea it exists. Similarly, if a coin looks too hard or excessive, it might scare people off. You can usually tell if a coin is good at this based on if you want to recollect it on future attempts. If the coin no longer feels worth it when you're replaying the level, that might be a sign that it could use some work. Lastly, coins should feel good to collect. If you feel a little rush of energy after getting a coin, that's good, because it means that it was fun and that it was hard enough for you to genuinely feel proud of getting it. If the coin is given to you for free, you won't get that feeling and you'll just be left empty inside. Or emptier than usual. So now that you get the gist of my coin philosophy, let's see how every coin in the entire game holds up. I'm obviously only going to be looking at in-game coins in this video, so map pack ones and the secrets aren't going to be included. Keep in mind that this tier list is based on my own opinion, and I don't expect anyone to agree with every placement. If you feel differently about a coin, I'd love to hear your perspective on it in the comments, since I think there's lots of potential for interesting discussion. Additionally, you can fill out the tier list for yourself with the link in the description, and by all means, feel free to make your own videos with it. But without further ado, here are my thoughts on every secret coin in Geometry Dash. The first coin of Stereo Madness is a pretty solid introduction to secret coins. When I first got the game, I actually didn't notice the fake wall and had no idea how to get this one. But 8 years later, yeah, this one's pretty obvious. I find it really interesting that you can collect this coin in two different ways because it perfectly matches the overall freedom of Stereo Madness, where you can freely jump around most of the level without dying. I'd definitely put this one lower if it wasn't the first coin in the game, but I think the introduction to fake walls is enough to land at a spot in the B tier. The second coin is pretty cool because it's actually based on a trick that you could pull off before coins were even added to the game. It plays around with the level design in a really fun way, and difficulty-wise I think it's a good match for the first level of the game. Because if you're a new player, you have to recognize that this is a jump you can safely make. The coin is also just fun to collect since the blocks that are normally meant to kill you are instead repurposed to help you out. I'll give it a solid A tier. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this coin is iconic. By noticing an opening in the wall, you get to play through a completely alternate ending to the level with increased difficulty. It's well hidden, but still mostly focused on skill. I could go on about what makes this coin so great, but I don't think it's necessary since nobody will be surprised that I'm putting this in S tier. Back on Track is a level all about the yellow jump pad. So why is it that the first coin uses a blue one? Not only has gravity changing not been introduced yet, but everything about this coin just feels wrong. When the entire level is focused on one specific mechanic, the coin should be centered around it as well. Not to mention, all you have to do to get this coin is fall, and the rest is done automatically. Oh, also, the portal's upside down. D tier. If it wasn't made obvious by Stereo Madness, fake walls are going to be a bit of a recurring theme with secret coins. In this case, there's a huge gap in the wall that you can fly through, and the coin is even placed directly inside the wall so new players can figure out the trick more easily. Unfortunately, I think this one is embarrassingly easy, so I'm gonna have to give it a D as well. I'll bump it up to a D+ since it's geared towards new players, and honestly, I think I would have went with C if the fake blocks were shifted up by one grid space. The third coin is simple, but very effective. You fall under a long platform and get this cool feeling of being underneath the level before a yellow pad launches you back on track. Not only does the coin make use of the level's core mechanic, but it also does so in a way that's easy to understand and is overall a cool challenge for beginners. Instead of the entire ground being solid, an extra jump was thrown in so it matches up with the normal path and isn't nearly as boring. It's a big step up from the previous two coins, so I'll be generous and give it an A. I don't really think this first coin in Polargeist has much challenge. You might not get it if you're going into the level blind, but once you see where it's positioned, you'll probably never miss it again. By putting a coin here, the level encourages you to hug the roof for this entire ship part, which actually makes it easier as well as more boring. I just don't think there's a reason not to get this one. F tier. The second coin's a lot more solid, but it's basically a clone of the third one from Back on Track. I think it would be a lot more interesting if it was rearranged so that it utilizes an orb rather than a jump pad, since that's the whole point of the level. So it's gonna get a C. Alright, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are waiting for this one, so let's talk about the third coin. You have to do this really precise jump onto a blue pad that launches you into the air, where you have to quickly react to a yellow orb and then do a blind jump after landing. On the surface, everything about that sounds terrible. And honestly, I'm not gonna disagree with that. This jump in particular is really hard and can be an absolute nightmare for even experienced players. But I think there's a sort of charm to it because this coin utilizes actual tech. You need to know enough about the game's physics to eyeball when to jump without being given blocks or spikes to help you out. It's definitely difficult, but also a little admirable. With that being said, I don't think it's very appropriate for level 3 of the entire game, and more importantly, it's placed way too far into the level for it to be worth it. I'd be much more willing to go for this coin if it was placed towards the start of the level, but putting it all the way over here turns it into more of a choke point and makes it a little too punishing for my liking. Not even I'm able to do this one consistently, and I never really feel like risking killing my run in order to go for it. And since I don't go for the coin much, I also often forget about the blind jump that immediately follows it. I'm really torn between giving this one a B or a C, but I think I'm going to go with B since at the end of the day, it's a really unique and memorable coin, and you don't get many that focus on tech in this game mode. Well, that was a lot of talking. Dryout's got this coin where you just blindly fall in a random spot and then hold down the jump button instead of having any sort of interesting gameplay. There's no way to tell where to fall, and there's no way to tell that the coin even exists unless you get it. That's an F if I've ever seen one. Fortunately, the second coin's a huge improvement. This one plays around with how well you understand jumping, because you need to be good enough at the game to eyeball the jump and realize that it's doable. I find that quite clever, so I'm going to give this one an A. And it's a prime example of something I like to call a pure coin. A pure coin is a coin that's incorporated seamlessly into the gameplay and doesn't rely on any extra platforms or objects or whatnot. If you're able to drop a coin into a finished layout without changing anything else, that's a pure coin. In Dryout's case, these spikes were originally one grid space higher before the coin was added, but the lack of something like a fake wall keeps it pure enough. Anyways, I bring this up because the last coin is pure as well. It forces you to take a significantly harder route in the ship part, taking the tight higher path instead of the lower route that almost everybody would default to. It's an extremely well placed coin that on its own completely changes how you approach this section of the level without needing much else. The coin is a massive step up from the first one in Polargeist, and I think it's more than worthy of S tier. The first coin of base after base is just falling through a wall. Not only is it easier than the normal path, but it also looks and feels ugly. The way the icon falls through the wall comes out super weird thanks to the hitboxes, and honestly I'd rather take the top path since there's more interesting stuff going on up there. F. The second coin is kind of like the one from Dryout in the sense that there's no hints that it even exists, and you'll never know if you passed it. But this time you have to do a much more interesting jump off this platform, after which you'll pick up the coin and make a sort of awkward recovery via 2 gravity portals. Everything about this coin is done really poorly, from the spot you jump off to the way you get put back on the main path. If there was a better recovery and some extra gameplay after falling, then it might have gotten a higher grade, but I still think that wouldn't be enough to excuse the fact that this one is way too hidden and the entrance is super random. Oh, and both of the recovery portals are upside down. Seriously, is this like a style choice or something? In conclusion, another F. And while we're at it, let's complete this set by handing out a third and final F to the last coin, where you just hold in the ship part for a solid 2 seconds and miss out on the fun of actually getting to play the level. Alright, I think I'm getting a little too harsh here, but luckily there's nowhere else to go but up. I promise I'm not going to be handing out Fs to everything. The first coin of Can't Let Go is, get this, another blind drop. This makes it the 3rd level in a row to pull off this trick, and once again, you sort of just have to know when to fall because there's no hint for it. Oh, and once again, there's no extra gameplay down here. It's just 3 bounces, which is a little fun to watch, but not challenging at all. I think I'm going to be a little generous with this one and give it... Actually, nah, another F. The second coin isn't too difficult, but it still provides a good challenge and is very clearly harder than the main route. For this point in the game, I think it's exactly what it needs to be. It's also another completely pure coin, which usually means that it involves actual skill. This one's a huge breath of fresh air from the past 4 coins, and it's getting a well-deserved A. This takes us to the last coin, which involves jumping off another unmarked spot, but at least it's a bit of a clever one. It puts it on the track for being a really good coin, but sadly, the recovery absolutely ruins it for me. You're sent back up to the main path with a series of jump pads, but for some reason there's a pink one thrown in, And not only that, it's the most front and center jump pad that you see when you're taking the normal route. When I was younger, that pad messed me up so many times because the placement confused me so much. I know it's clearly meant for the coin, but in the moment it always looked like it was part of the regular level, and it would completely mess with my upside down sight rating. And you know what? This coin is getting no forgiveness from me. In fact, I'm putting this one below the F tier and into the what were you thinking tier. Coin 1 of Jumper is a genuinely good challenge, especially since it directly builds off the newly introduced upside down ship. This whole part of the level sort of serves as a tutorial for it, and because of that, the gameplay is super simple and kind of boring, so this coin helps keep things a lot more interesting. I don't think it's good enough for S tier since it's pretty stressful and also looks kind of ugly. I think there would have been better approaches than passing through a fake wall, but I'll happily give it an A+ anyways. Moving on to the second coin, how do you miss this one? Like, I think people are more likely to stumble into this one than fall and go the normal way. It's obviously a harder path, which is good, but I think most of that difficulty comes from the blind drop after you pick up the coin. So like, D, I guess? Finally, the last coin is a pure one in the ship part that's placed really nicely. Lots of previous ship coins pulled off this same trick, but it's very effective. My only complaint is that it probably could benefit from a bit more challenge, so I would move it over to the next spike and then shift things around so you have to fly under both. Let's go with a B. Okay, look, I'm sorry, but the first coin of Time Machine is too free. Like, it's really not that hard of a jump, and I can't help but feel like it was placed there under the assumption that it would be harder. On the bright side, it is pretty satisfying to pull off, and is also nice and pure, so it gets a C. The second coin builds off of the newly introduced mirror portal in the same way that Jumper did with reversed gravity. You have to go through a pretty tricky gap with the camera flipped as well, but I think that's a good challenge for this point in the game. Not to mention, you're given the option to go above, below, or through the spikes in this spot, which is a lot of fun. This one gets an A, but a mirrored one. For the last coin, I'm sad to report that it's yet another spot where you randomly fall. The recovery portal is finally right side up, but this time there's 2 pink orbs, which aren't supposed to be a thing yet. Fortunately, they don't obstruct the main path like Can't Let Go, but I still heavily dislike coins that use unintroduced mechanics. Combine that with the pretty lazy trust fall, and we're looking at another F tier. Okay, I promise things get better from here on out. Cycle's first coin is another fake wall that you just roll into, but for once there's actually more going on past that. You have to make a somewhat precise recovery after grabbing the coin, and it flows nicely without needing any helper portals or whatnot. I'm not too fond of the way you enter this one since I think it needs a bit more player input to feel alive, but also I'm just getting tired of fake walls in general, so I'm gonna put this one at C. The second coin is just pure skill, and I'm honestly so impressed by how well placed it is. You have to head through the gravity portal and immediately prepare for a well-timed swoop that feels so good to pull off. There's no extra objects needed for this coin, and it feels super fresh compared to the previous ship ones. S. The last coin's also really fun because it has both skill and memory aspects that go hand in hand really nicely. Part of the challenge for this coin is figuring out how you can get it, because it looks like it's completely out of bounds at first. You have to search around for the little cracks in the level design and figure out how to take advantage of them to get the coin and safely recover. It's fun to figure out and just as fun to actually collect. The coin isn't pure, but I'm really glad that it doesn't use fake walls or fake spikes or anything like that. Another S. xStep's first coin is pretty similar to the second one in Cycles, since it requires a pretty risky swoop downwards that's a lot harder than it looks. It's simple and it's pure, and while it's easier than the one in Cycles, it can sometimes feel inconsistent, so we'll give it an A. There's definitely some challenge involved with the second coin, but it's kind of janky, so I don't usually go for it. The hitboxes are a lot weirder than what you'd expect them to be, and while a lot of wall coins have that problem, it's especially prevalent here. D tier, and I still stand true to my point in the GD mechanics video that you should get this coin from entering the Q portal upside down. The third coin is another one of those blind drops, but this time it's done super right. The coin is always visible, and it serves as a huge hint for what you need to do. I'm not a big fan of this blue orb, since by the time it's visible in the camera, it's already too late. It could have easily been replaced with a pad, and although that makes it easier, I think it's well worth it since it's the main mechanic of xStep in the first place. Also, it sends you directly into a yellow orb anyways. B-, mainly because of camera weirdness. Alright, that's 10 levels down for a total of 30 coins so far. With that, I want to quickly pause for what the nerds say is a call to action, which basically just means if you like what you're seeing so far, subscribe? ? Look, we're dangerously close to 500,000 subscribers, and as I always say, I don't even post that often, so there's not much to lose. I focus on quality over quantity, which is Canadian for I'm lazy. And if you're still not convinced, here's that one green screen everyone uses. Alright, that's all. At the very least, keep it in the back of your head. Let's keep going. I was kinda surprised to hear that a lot of people don't like the first coin of Clutterfunk, since I don't think it's bad at all. Maybe I'm just biased because I like pure ship coins that force you to take a harder route that you normally wouldn't take. I don't know, I'm giving this one an A because if you don't like it, that's just a skill issue. I don't usually get the second coin in this level, but I do think it's cool that it skips a gravity portal. However, the gimmick feels really overdone and the coin needs more going on in general. C. Third coin's just plain uncool. Not only do you have to blindly fall once again, but you have to keep holding since there's a series of blind jumps on the ground directly after. There's also, once again, no way to tell when you missed the coin, when it could have easily been placed out of reach on the main path. If it was like that and also maybe had this saw removed, I'd be a lot more fond of it. But otherwise, it's another F tier for reasons I've mentioned many times now. The first coin of Theory of Everything does a nice job building off the introduction of the UFO game mode, but I think it would have been a lot cleaner if the fake wall was just removed entirely. It probably didn't make sense to do that though, since the level existed before coins were added. It gets a B. Oh boy, this next coin is one hell of a challenge, and I love it. It's such a good application of mini ship, especially since it wasn't used all that much in Clutterfunk. It's also super well placed, and most importantly, it's consistently difficult. It's hard, but not far enough in the level for it to feel like a huge choke point. It's tempting, and that's good. Easy S. I originally didn't like this level's last coin, but as I was writing this video, it started to grow on me. You can tell where you're supposed to fall thanks to the missing saw blade, and then you're immediately thrown back up with jump pads. I think knowing where to fall is challenging enough in this case, since you have to jump over this really tempting looking jump pad. Also, putting orbs down there would just cause camera problems. The coin could definitely benefit from a clearer indication that you missed it, but either way, the missing saw blade is a huge step in the right direction, so we'll give it a B+. By the way, I don't know if I'm just crazy, but I always think this coin is further into the section than it actually is. Alright, we reached Electroman Adventures, which means we're entering a whole new era of secret coins. All of the previous coins were edited into the level in Update 1.6, but from here on out, the levels were actually built with coins directly in mind. With that being said, let's see what we're up against. Coin 1 of Electroman makes some really good use of the breakable blocks, which definitely isn't something you see every day. It tries to throw you off with this down arrow as well as the general structure of the gameplay, but if you paid attention to how the breaking blocks were introduced, you might realize you can keep going higher. There's even a little more gameplay up there, which is much appreciated. I was going to take off a few marks because the gameplay is a little hard to understand at first, mainly because of this block with the blue pad, but then I realized no, it's honestly fine. It's weird like once, but this path becomes second nature very quickly. It's hidden but very findable if you're paying attention, and because of that, I don't think the actual coin needs to be out in the open. I'm torn on whether to give this one an A or an S, but I might actually go with S because of how well it tricks your brain into focusing on the main path and ignoring the extra breakable blocks. Coin 2 comes directly after the first one, and this time it's just hidden away in a wall like we've seen many times already. I can't say I'm a fan of this one, mainly because the hitboxes of the corner blocks can be really confusing. There's definitely some challenge, but I wish it was in a more unique spot, like between two saws, so it's getting a D. The final coin is completely free, and also less effort than taking the main path. Easy F, this one's not even worth my time. The first coin of Clubstep is completely free, and also less effort than taking the main path. Another F. Okay, wait, let's back up and talk about this one a little. First up, this is a demon level. You'd expect hard coins from it, and I'll be honest, this coin might look a little intimidating at first. It presents itself as a really precise looking coin, but once you get it, you realize that it's pretty much impossible to mess up. I almost feel like it would make more sense to redecorate this part and then move the coin to the normal path. Also, if you miss the coin, you can't do this cool jump, which, come to think of it, probably could have been tied to the coin to add an extra step. Whatever, you know what they say, it's not Clubstep without the L. Well, I mean, it's not an L, it's an F. You get the point. The second coin's an improvement, and this time going into a wall actually makes sense since it's a common theme in the level. The gameplay is pretty much identical to the normal route, but the background walls make the spikes even harder to see. I don't think this coin is anything crazy, but in the context of Clubstep, it just works. C tier. For Clubstep. I think the last coin of this level could be improved gameplay-wise, but I really like the idea behind it. If you reach this point in the level, you're probably shaking over the fact that you're at the very end, which on its own makes the coin so much more intense. It's an easy coin, but it requires some serious bravery to go for. I like the idea of having a choke coin here since it perfectly matches the energy of Clubstep, but only as a one-time thing because if you do this at the end of every demon level, it's just gonna get annoying. A tier, why not? Coin 1 of Electrodynamix is a pure one that's very straightforward. Take a slightly harder path, get a reward for it. It's fun and definitely satisfying to get, but I think a little more challenge would help make it shine. I'll be nice and give it a B though. Second coin, I'm just not really sure what's up with this one. The entire coin route feels kind of awkward, and especially the jump back to the main path. Fortunately, the placement of the coin is good, and I like how you enter it by skipping an orb that you'd instinctively press, so I'll bump it up to a D before you yell at me for handing out yet another F. The last coin is supposed to be a sort of heat of the moment coin that tests how fast you can react at triple speed. All you really have to do is skip an orb though, and it's about the same difficulty as taking the main path. It also leads into a blind jump and is overall pretty forgettable, but it plays off of a decent idea and is pretty clean visually, so I'll give it a C. The first coin of Hexagon Force is simple, but I find the way that you get there to be a little clever. I think this coin would be more justified if it was towards the end of the level, but for one that's placed right at the start, I think it needs more spice to it. C tier. Coin 2 is just plain unoriginal. It could have played off the new slope physics or something, but nope, it's just another generic wall coin. It flows well enough for a D, but that doesn't mean it's good. Finally, the last coin is, well, it's another wall coin. Pretty much exactly the same as the previous one, just slower. It's not awful gameplay-wise, but so many coins have done this exact trick that it's completely stale by now. Like, after looking at all the coins before this one, I'm completely sick of it. Not only am I giving this one an F tier, but I'm moving it to its own tier list along with every other coin that involves flying the ship through a fake wall and nothing else. Moving on to blast processing, I think the first coin is exactly what it needs to be. There haven't been any dual coins yet, and mixing one with the wave is a match made in heaven because you always feel in control. The dual makes this one look a lot harder to get than it actually is, but also way cooler. It's really satisfying. S. Coin 2 requires some interesting UFO timing, and the fake teeth is a nice touch. It could have been a fake wall, and I'm grateful that it's not. Not much to complain about here, I think it's perfectly well done, and I'm giving it an A. For some reason, whenever I get the third coin, I always tell myself, oh wow, that was a lot like the last coin. Which isn't necessarily true since they play out quite differently, but there's definitely some resemblance. It's also just kind of unoriginal, and nothing feels special about it at this point in the game. It would have been cool to see the spikes filled in, similar to Theory of Everything, but its current state is by no means terrible, so we'll give it a C. I'm gonna be real with you guys, I don't even know how to explain the first coin in Theory 2. Like, honestly, I've stopped paying attention to what's going on. You just kind of learn how to get it, and then it becomes muscle memory. But it's a solid B, nothing that concerns me too much. The second coin's neat because I really like the timing that's required to get it, and it always feels super satisfying to pull off. Problem is, it's really hard to eyeball. The outlines for the wall need to be a lot stronger, because right now my strategy is to just blindly let go and hope that I'll make it through the opening. Maybe other people are able to see it more clearly, but I personally just go off of what feels right. And if that was the intent for this coin, I don't know if that's the best idea. I would have given this coin an A, but the lack of clarity in the outlines drops it to a C. Third coin is just a repeat of the second one from Jumper, but with more decoration. By this point in the game, going up there is just instinct, and I find myself doing it even when I didn't intend on it. The X on the yellow orb is kinda cheap, and you have to do a weirdly delayed jump in order to recover from the coin, which is just a recipe for chokes this late in the level. I'm gonna have to give it an F because this level has a lot of untapped coin potential, and this one just wastes it. On the bright side, it does make it easier to beat the level with 3 coins so that you get this cool icon. Coin 1 of Geometrical Dominator is creative, and even a bit of a puzzle since you need to figure out how to get through the gap. The use of outlines here is a really nice break from the normal fake block style, and I'm glad that it was designed this way so that the path to the coin is a lot more clear. My main gripe with this coin is the bugs, because there's a lot of extra ways to fit through the gap, and most of them are unintended and really should have been accounted for. For example, you can just not jump and hit the gravity portal, which reveals some buggy behavior, or you can do a well-timed jump after picking up the coin to stay upside down all the way until the next cube part. This coin would have gotten a B or a B+, but the sheer number of bugs surrounding it drops it to a C, even if they are kind of fun. The second coin is kinda like the first one from Time Machine, but done super right. The high speed mixed with the floatiness of the robot game mode makes this one extremely fun to collect, even if it is really easy. You'll probably pass by it on your first playthrough, but it's enough to make you go, oh, that's clever, I'm gonna go for it next time. It's also completely pure, which helps it feel like this really graceful leap of faith with nothing to get in the way. I was debating taking off marks since it's super easy, but it's also really satisfying and utilizes the robot game mode quite nicely. Not to mention, you actually have to make a bit of a conscious effort to get this one, so it's not free. Easy S tier, fight me. Not much to say about this last coin. I guess there's moving objects now, but it doesn't really add that much in this case. I'm just gonna put it in the D tier of the wall tier list we made earlier. Deadlocked marks the first use of a key coin, where you have to grab the key in the ship part to unlock the area with the coin later on. These coins are a little controversial, because in a lot of cases you can just replace the key itself with the coin, since that's usually the hard one to get. Sure enough, it's super easy to grab the coin after picking up the key, but I'm gonna be nice with this one since it's the first time a key was used and it's kind of cool. The key itself is placed in a pure and really clever spot, requiring a well-timed swoop in the ship that always feels a little risky to pull off. Official levels never scale down their coins, so it actually makes a bit of sense to use a key here since a coin wouldn't fit without looking strange. It's weird that you don't get the actual coin until much later on, but I like that it opens up an alternate route instead of freely throwing the coin at you. I'm gonna give this one an A, but I might not be as generous with the future coins. The second coin requires falling through a wall and doing a series of well-timed jumps with the robot, and unlike most wall coins, I think this one is done right for once. The coin is pretty drawn out, and the fake wall is just a small part of it. The recovery onto the main path is super clean as well, and I like how it skips a gravity portal. I'm a huge fan of this invisible block since it only appears if you go for the coin, but it kinda tricks you into thinking that it's always been there. It's so much better than popping up an extra platform last minute and giving you no time to react. Overall, the robot timings for this coin feel very consistent with the rest of the level's gameplay, while still being harder and less straightforward than the main route. And best of all, there's very few elements to distract you if you're not going for it. Another very solid A tier. Okay, quick footnote, while editing I found that you can cheese the coin like this, and also like this. Doesn't change anything, I just thought that was funny. I could not think of a better design for the third coin. It's pure and so simple, but still super risky feeling thanks to the little boss laser. With a bit of practice, it's not hard at all to get, but it always feels really stylish when you do go for it. And if you miss it at first, you'll know exactly what to do the next time around. I've said it before, but I love coins that make you take a harder path without actually adding any more objects. S. Speaking of simplicity, the first coin of Fingerdash does this just as well. Even if you only learned how to control the spider a few seconds ago, the way you get this coin is immediately understandable. It's really tempting to go for, and I think that's because the only alternative is to do a slow walk of shame past it where you don't get to click anything. The coin is purely skill focused and very satisfying to grab. I'm glad it's sitting out in the open because I think adding extra distractions like a fake wall would have been super overkill. I'm going to give this one another S, but I'll bump it down to an S- because I think this coin was placed under the assumption that it would be a lot harder than it actually is. It does the job for newer players though, since they usually head right into Fingerdash anyways. Coin 2 feels like it was a wall coin that got saved last minute and repurposed into something else, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Squeezing through the 2 fire bars looks really cool visually and helps tie the coin into the theming of the level instead of making it look like a last minute addition. Compared to the other ship coins, it's a huge step up, and for that it gets an A. You know, if there's one coin nobody forgets, it's this last one. There's 10 mini coins scattered throughout the wave part, and you have to pick up every single one in order to collect the big coin at the end. It's definitely a bit over the top, but that's what makes it so special. The actual wave gameplay here is very generic, so the addition of the mini coins makes it a lot more fun and engaging to play through. Like without the coins, this part would absolutely suck. It reminds me a lot of the rings from Mario, where you have to collect all the red coins for a reward. It's just extra optional fun. I think my favorite part is the fact that the mini coins disappear as soon as you miss one, so if you're not going for the coin, you won't have all this extra pressure getting in your way. This one's an easy S tier, and I wish more levels did something similar. Every now and then I see custom levels that try to do a coin like this, but they always put the collectibles in spots that are way too hard. It's not terrible, but I like having them positioned on the regular path without any weird deviations. For the first coin of 7 Seas, I'm going to relax my expectations a little since it's meant to be a first level like Stereo Madness. Either way, I find this one to be kind of mean since it only reveals itself after it's too late. This means that the only strategy is to memorize when it appears so you know which completely ordinary looking wall to jump into. I'd give it an F, but I'm just really glad the coin reveals itself if you miss it, so that's enough for me to bump it up to a D. Actually, I'll give it a D+, since the jump itself is pretty cool. The second coin is way too easy, and I mean even for a level 1. Technically it's tighter than the one in Back on Track, but the darker wall makes it a lot more obvious. At least it's somewhat visually appealing and a good temptation for super new players. I'm gonna put it in D on the wall tier list and also propose that it should have been here or something. Coin 3 is a much fairer fall than something like Dry Out or Can't Let Go, because you actually get a chance to see what's down there. The recovery with the jump pad is super smooth, and overall I think this one is simple and fitting for a first level. B. So your only hint for the first coin in Viking Arena is this keyhole, but it makes you expect that the key is somewhere in the ship part, which it isn't. Rather, it's behind this random glow at the start of the level. This one's just lazy, and it fails what I like to call the key test. Basically, if you remove the key and just put the coin here, would it still be good? No, in this case you just have a super generic custom level coin. I would have put the key in a pure spot somewhere in the ship part, or repurposed the glow into a jump ring that sends you to a higher area while keeping the key visible. As much as I want to give this one an F, I'll give it a D- for creativity. The second coin is... yeah, I don't even care, I'm giving this one an S. It's so simple, but there's something super satisfying about it, from the way it's hinted at to the way the wall fades away. If this was a boring wall coin like base after base, this one would have been an F, but it feels and flows so perfectly. It reminds me so much of the secrets you'd find in Mario or Celeste. I don't know, this one just feels so right to me and I love it. The last coin is pretty easy, but I think that's fair since Viking Arena is an easy level. Without these arrows pointing up, you'd probably stumble into it by accident. Like most ship coins, this one doesn't feel too special and probably could have benefited from spikes or something. But at least it's not a wall coin, so I'll give it a C. Coin 1 of Airborne Robots is another key coin, but at least this time the key is visible, so you're actually encouraged to think about how to get up there. And the way you do it is by touching this little glow, causing a platform to move down. I have to say, I'm not a fan of the diagonal movement here. It would have looked so much nicer if it just fell straight down, but I think the best approach would have been to leave out the movement entirely and replace it with a well-timed jump like so. The key causes a marked platform to fall down later on, opening up a path to the coin. The coin's pretty much unmissable, so it renders the key kind of pointless, but at least it looks pretty cool. Keys are starting to get a little stale, so I'd remove this part entirely and move the coin to where the key was, floating barely out of reach. D, but more like a D+ since there's potential. The second coin is pretty much exactly the same as what Viking Arena did, which is pretty much exactly the same as what the 7 Seas did, which is pretty much exactly the same as what Geometrical Dominator did, which is pretty much exactly the same as what Hexagon Force did. Yeah, this is another F for the wall tier list. The third coin is centered around this hidden orb, like every custom level ever. But I think there's some charm to it, like you might notice the little orb effect and realize what to do, or you might instinctively tap here because it just feels right. Even if you miss it, the coin remains visible on the end screen, so you can sit there and reflect on how you might be able to get it. And when you finally do, it feels like a sort of alternate ending to the level. Not as much as something like Stereo Madness, but you're still pulling off your last jump in a different spot. I'll give it a B because I would have loved to see it branch out into a new route for a bit longer. Alright, it's time to talk about the Sub-Zero coins once again. If you never followed the whole drama, these coins were originally so bad that I made an entire video dedicated to criticizing them, and it caused RobTop to go back and actually improve them in the next update. I'm going to be reviewing both versions of the coins in this video, but in a lot less detail, so if you want a more in-depth review of the coins, you can check out my 2 videos on them. The first coin of Press Start is another wall coin, but this time it's completely invisible until you ram yourself into it. The only hint you had was the missing spikes, but the coin update added significantly more glow to help clear things up. I think this coin is a little too sneaky for what's supposed to be the first in the game, and there's very little challenge actually involved in it. Once you figure out where the coin is hidden, it's no longer fun because gameplay-wise you're just sliding across and doing absolutely nothing. I'd say this one is an F bumped up to a D+ after the update, and the plus is mainly because it syncs with the coin sound and the music. Also, this one goes in the wall tier list as well. Coin 2 is found by skipping this yellow orb, after which the map magically rearranges and reveals the coin. It's not something many people would think to try, so my original grade would have been an easy F. However, as of the new update, the coin is always visible in this part, giving you an actual reason to experiment and figure out how to get there. I still shake every time I see this coin. It's such a huge improvement, and it reminds me that my video, which was supposed to be a joke, actually impacted the game forever. Anyways, I also like how an extra jump is now required to pick up the coin, because why not? My final grade for this one is going to be a C+, since it's a cool concept, but I find the map rearranging to be a little jarring. Last coin is pretty much exactly the same as the one in Deadlocked, but a lot more new player friendly. It's the only coin that wasn't updated since it's already perfect as is. It gets an S tier for all the same reasons as Deadlocked. The infamous first coin of Nock Em, where you ram into this random wall only for a coin to magically appear. There's no way to tell that there's a coin here since it only shows up after touching the wall. I think making the coin visible might help a little bit, but it doesn't change the fact that the positioning of this one just sucks. That's an F tier if I've ever seen one. Previously the only indication was a tiny little particle, but the update changed one of the dots on the wall to be red. So it's still a dumpster fire, but now the dumpster's spray painted a different color. It really doesn't do much to help improve things. I'd bump this one up to a D- or an F+ since there's technically a better indicator now, but I'm still pissed that this coin exists at all, so
I'm going to give you a super F!
When it comes to the second coin, I think it's kind of justified to use a key here since there's not enough room to fit a full-sized coin without it looking ugly. It's the same argument I made for Deadlocked. It's a really awkward transition though, since coming from the wave messes up your timing quite a bit. To fix this, it got nerfed and moved down after the coin update to hopefully help you feel a little more in control. The key was also recolored to stand out a bit more. You pick up the actual coin over in the ball part, and I don't think there's anything too special about it. This one's like a D- bumped up to a D after the update. Okay, the last coin is wild. Previously you got it by running through this random unmarked wall, then it's just given to you for free. But after the update, not only was the wall given a marking, but a pretty tricky challenge was also added inside of it. You have to react quickly to it, but it's nothing impossible by any means. But in a nutshell, the whole gimmick of this coin was changed from being well hidden to being an optional spider challenge. It's so much more fun to collect now, and believe it or not, this is an F tier coin that got bumped up all the way to S. Before the coin update, the first coin of Power Trip was just a sort of spiced up version of the first one in Stereo Madness. And by that I mean you fall through this wall, which might I add is completely unmarked, unlike almost every other wall coin we've discussed. then you just fall back onto the main path. The update fixed this by replacing the fake wall with an actual gap you can slide through, and also adding some extra gameplay before you recover. It even takes some advantage of its spiky platforms and gives them a second purpose, which is really creative. The whole thing flows super nicely now, and I'm promoting it from an F to a B. My biggest gripe with Coin 2 was the fact that it was basically the same as the first coin in the sense that you fall through yet another unmarked wall, and that's all there is to it. But interestingly enough, this one got completely overhauled after the coin update. There's now an invisible orb at one point, marked by a little sparkle as well as the usual orb effect when you pass it. Pressing this orb unlocks a second one later down, which allows you to launch upwards and grab the coin from below. It's worth noting that you do have to time the orb correctly, otherwise you'll land in the spikes after getting the coin. The whole thing is very custom level-like, and I do like it a lot more, but I think there needs to be more feedback after you hit the first orb, because right now absolutely nothing happens. I'm gonna go with a C for this one, but it's still a huge step up from the F this would have been. Finally, Power Trip's last coin requires you to tap a few times during this little intermission, which causes the text to turn green and unlocks a coin. Before the update, this coin was placed all the way at the end of the level, but afterwards it was moved directly after the message, so it's a lot less confusing to people looking up walkthroughs. Funny enough, the old version meant that you actually had to beat this level legitimately, whereas now you can skip the last 25% and still finish with 3 coins. I still think the general idea behind this coin is kind of weird, since you'd only find it by playing around during this short break. But a lot of people jump around here anyways, and hopefully the text changing colors is a bit of a giveaway. It's a strange idea, but definitely a playful one, and I find it cool that it doesn't divert from the main path, sorta like Fingerdash. I'll give it a D+, upgraded to a C+ after the update. And there you have it, my honest and unhinged opinions on every secret coin in Geometry Dash. Here's what the final list looks like, and of course, we can't forget about the wall coins of shame. Once again, this is not a definitive list, and everything you heard is entirely my own opinion. I just wanted to discuss how I personally see each coin, and hopefully shed some light on some details or ideas that you never really thought about. If you're still watching, you should probably be a little concerned about that, but also thank you. I find it so cool that I could ramble about random parts of the game, and people will actually be willing to listen. Consider subscribing if you want to see more stuff like this, whether it's more coin-related videos or something even more ridiculous. But in the meantime, be sure to go bully the last coin of Can't Let Go, because that's the only one that is completely deserved.